Are all angels and spirits people who have lived here in the physical realm? I had this most amazing, fantastic interview with Curtis Childs, who is an expert on the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a famous mystic who had a profound spiritual awakening, and he documented his extraordinary spiritual experiences and the wisdom he gathered from angels. And I am so eager to share it with you.
Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life.
Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. In the mid-1700s, Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a Swedish scientist, philosopher, theologian, revelator, and mystic, experienced a profound spiritual awakening. And over the next 30 years, he documented his extraordinary spiritual experiences and the wisdom he gained from the angels who guided him. Today, it is my pleasure to be speaking with Curtis Childs, an international speaker and influencer who, by dedicating himself to sharing Swedenborg's profound insights, has made spirituality accessible and relevant for today's audience by giving people practical ways to improve their lives through spirituality. While obtaining his degree in communication studies from Oakland University, Curtis experienced an internal battle with depression, and after a period of intense suffering, he recovered from his depression with the help of modern medicine, therapy, and a return to the spiritual uplifting messages he had previously found in Swedenborg's writings. Now, Curtis is applying his desire to help others find peace through Swedenborg's insights by producing and hosting a weekly webcast. He is the creator and host of Off the Left Eye brand and the chief visionary officer at the Swedenborg Foundation, and his video content has been viewed over 50 million times with more than 600,000 followers across social media. Curtis is happiest when he can use Swedenborg's concepts to help someone solve something they used to think was unsolvable. He has appeared on many international radio shows, podcasts, and YouTube shows, and he has also been a speaker at several notable conferences. And full disclosure, I had the pleasure of meeting Curtis last summer when he was a speaker at the IANS conference, which is the International Association for Near-Death Experiencers. I learned much from his presentation, and today I'm very excited to share Curtis and his Swedenborg teachings with all of you. I'm looking forward to asking Curtis, who will be speaking to us today from Bryn Athyn, Pennsylvania, about the last words his grandfather spoke that inspired how Curtis lives his life, how Swedenborg's teachings helped Curtis recover from depression, Swedenborg's description of both the afterlife and the presence of angels with us here on earth, how Swedenborg's teachings are helping people to understand spirituality in new ways, and more, for an enlightening interview with Curtis that is surely going to bring us many important, inspiring insights. Hi, Curtis.
Hello.
A warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast. It's so good to see you again.
Great to see you again, Irene. Thanks for that kind introduction. I'm so excited to get to talk with you and your audience for a while about these important things.
They're going to learn, everyone's going to learn, like I did, so many fascinating things. But let's start so that before we get to Emanuel Swedenborg, let's start with you. Because I know that when you were 6, your family was in a tragic car accident, and sadly, your sister was killed. Do you think that tragedy was the source of the anxious thoughts and depressive feelings that began when you were starting college? What was that period of intense suffering in your life about?
Yeah, I really appreciated before we got on the interview, Irene, you told me some of your story, which I'm sure your audience is familiar with, but yours involved, losing someone you loved in a car accident. Immediately when you started talking about that, I just thought like, okay, everyone has different experiences with grief, but like there's something in common there. I don't know. I don't know how it affected me. I was six, so it's so hard to piece back. It's like you take this explosion and try to figure out how did the pieces go back together. I don't know what in my life led from that. I know everything changed then. I don't even remember that much of my early life. I remember like the actual car accident and some of the time following it.
Was she in the back seat with you?
Yeah, it was my mom and dad, and then there was me and my younger sister, and then Annika was my older sister. So we were all in the back there. Yep, and we were on the highway, lost control of the car. I didn't know at the time, but she died right away. We were helicoptered, or she was helicoptered to a different hospital. It definitely was it defined the rest of my life. I feel like in that ever since then, I've been kind of trying to put life back together and like, how does this make sense again? So certainly you can't, there's no way you're going to go through that and not have that. You still got those wounds you're carrying with you. So I
Of
think
course.
when I was in college, that was the first sort of major depressive episode that I had. And I think some of that stuff was just bottled up from before. I looking back now, I saw I had little signs and tendencies toward that. Like I had obsessive compulsive disorder a little bit. I didn't really recognize it for what it was, but just when I started to turn about 18, I just lost control of my brain, in that there was just the negative thoughts all the time and fears, like so many fears, and just like the volume got turned up on all that stuff, and it just wouldn't let up. And I remember I didn't have a label for it. I didn't know you would call it depression. Later I was talking to a therapist and they said, oh, that's what you have. And I said, okay, but it's not depression. Like
It's
I
unresolved grief, if you ask
yeah,
me.
yeah. So yes, I'm sure it's connected to that. I feel like my journey into spirituality sort of really started there because again, I'm looking for answers and how can life be better than it is. So I would say there's a connection there, and I'm sure it's still a big part of who I am today. This is I do believe that divine providence is what Swedenborg would call it, but the plan can bring and will bring good things out of everything, no matter how terrible it is. So I'm not saying I would go back and try to change things. And I do think I'm excited. I feel like I'm gonna meet my sister again on
Oh,
the
you
other
are.
side, and I'm kind of saving up the excitement for that. But so it's how it is with grief. It's like it's terrible and sad, but you're not gonna like I don't want to try to undo it. I'm just gonna go forward.
Right, but it resulted in this depression. But the good news is that you got through your depression with the help of modern medicine, therapy, and a return to those spiritually uplifting messages you'd found in Emanuel Swedenborg's writings. So how did you, I know you went to a Swedenborgian church, which I have never heard of, to tell you the truth. So you were fortunate enough to attend this in your youth. And there was a specifically spiritual uplifting message that he had that affected your life for the better. So could you educate all of us, please? What is the Swedenborgian Church? What
Yeah.
was that enlightening message? Tell us about that period.
Yep. Well, I'm not surprised you never heard of Swedenborgian Church because it's not very big. There's not very many people in it, and it's not something that was started by Swedenborg. So Swedenborg was, he was near-death experience before it was cool. There was no such thing as near-death. Actually, Raymond Moody, who made up the term near-death experience in his book Life After Life, he in that very first book went through at one point and had sections on where have this happened in history, because all these people are in the hospitals reporting these NDEs now. What like this in history? And he just had like a section on the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Bible, and then Swedenborg, because Swedenborg was so similar to the modern near-death experience movement, but again happened a couple hundred years before. So Swedenborg, yeah, didn't start a church, didn't have like a following, but he was having these spiritual. He was up until his mid 50s was just a very successful Renaissance uber genius guy who was in mining, an inventor, did leading anatomist in the world. This was back in the time when you could kind of be good at all the sciences because none of them were that developed. So
Was this like in the 1800s?
it was in 1700s. So he started publishing his spiritual works in the late 1740s. So yes, so that was he was doing all this in the mid 1700s. And he was well known throughout Europe. I mean, the newspaper would report when he came into a certain town. He was very close to the king of Sweden. He was in the Swedish House of Nobles. Sweden was a world power at the time. So he was up there. And then everything changed, just like you were describing how for you had this spiritual awakening and everything changed. He had his spiritual awakening, which actually he documented very closely and very well.
How did that happen? Does anyone know exactly?
Oh yeah, you can go. The thing about Swedenborg is it's not just that he had these experiences, but he recorded everything so meticulously. So you can read, he was keeping a journal of his dreams when the thing started. So you can actually see, and it started for him in dreams, but then they started to turn into full-on experiences. But you could just go read night by night what was happening to him. Then he continued after his awakening, which there was a whole bunch of intense experience. We had a show that we made on our channel called 10 Early Signs of a Spiritual Awakening that was about all the different stages and phases that he went throughout this. And he had to, there was a lot of personal work he had to do. He had to confront his ego. Like, he was really full of himself because he was so smart and so successful. And so he had this whole thing where he had to kind of have what we would call an ego death now or something, where he had to confront that and understand that the divine exists and that the spiritual world exists and all these things. So we had this whole process that you can read play by play. Just go in there and see exactly what happened. And then from that to the end of his life, he changed track and just wrote about the exploration of the spirit for the 30 volumes over the last 30 years.
Wow.
Of every day having these spiritual experiences and writing about them. So a lot of material in there. So what some people have done, and his material has influenced probably a lot of things about all of your viewers' lives. I mean, a lot of like the New Thought movement, which is there's a ton of Swedenborg influence in there. Swedenborg influenced like Helen Keller and all that she did to change the way that society is. A lot of William Blake, Ralph Waldo Emerson, even Daniel Burnham, and how they lay out cities. The founding fathers of America had exposure to him. He's all over the place.
Wow.
He's in so many things, and people throughout history have had different ways of trying to build something on this. And some people have done that through getting churches together where you kind of use his ideas to do what churches do, like to try to connect you to God. And so that I was raised in one of those churches in Rochester, Michigan. So my parents already read about Swedenborg. I already knew about that.
It's amazing your parents were so like ahead, open-minded and ahead of their...
They're cool. I mean, I wouldn't be like I am without them, because they were into it, but they weren't like overbearing. It's not rigid, but the nature of Swedenborg's material, you can't be rigid and fundamentalist about it. It's so introspective. It's so expansive. There was a guy named D.T. Suzuki, who is sort of the father of bringing Zen Buddhism to the West. He was that was his impact on the world. He wrote a book about Swedenborg called Buddha of the North.
Wow.
Because he was saying that although Swedenborg, you'll find a lot of language you would recognize from Christianity in their heaven and hell, and talks about Jesus, but his philosophy also shares so much in common with Eastern philosophy that he was. Anyway, it's very cool, very big.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it was all around me, but I was a kid. What did I care? Like I knew about it. Certainly when Annika died, that put that on my radar. Suddenly I had to think about life after death. I remember being young, and I don't know how my parents did it. I don't know how they survived that and continued to care for us during it. I'm grateful to them. So to me, I think I got shielded from some of the worst of it because, I was a kid. I remember going and talking to some of my friends not that long after the accident and just saying, Annika died, and then we just went and played. That's what kids can kind of go in and out of that. But anyway, I remember my dad having myself and my sister. Actually, when we were in the car accident, my mom was very pregnant with my brother who was about to
Wow.
be born. He was fine, but anyway, so my younger sister and I and my dad would do what you called take a trip to heaven, where it was almost like a guided meditation, but we would just close our eyes and imagine, and he would just talk us through going and seeing Annika in heaven.
Wow.
And like, what's she doing while she's there? What's she like? Actually, I did have an aunt who was having sort of visitations or experiences with Annika and telling us what she saw there. And I was like, well, that's cool. So we had like a little sense of who she was there, but that was all informed as well by what we knew of Swedenborg and the kind of life that people would live. Because that's to have details about the afterlife is really important to I think to help deal with loss. I remember once in our show we actually had do you remember in France there was a terrorist attack in Nice, France, where somebody drove a truck
I
into
remember that. Yes, very much so.
So the parents of one of the young men, an American who was there who died, they were watching our show and actually were so moved by it and it was helping them with their grief that we had them as a guest on our program. And what they were saying is what really helped was Swedenborg's detailed descriptions of how people live in the afterlife gave them enough that his mom, Nick's mom, could imagine what he's doing. And
Wow.
that matters, because it's one thing to say, oh, they live on, but you need more than that. So we could sort of imagine Annika and what she was doing. I think that mattered to me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Really, that's beautiful. That's so advanced for their time. There are people today who would still not accept that.
Yeah.
And there was a specific Swedenborg message that affected your life for the better at that time. What was that message?
So if we fast forward from being a little kid back to when I started to get my depression, there's really two ideas that were a lifeline for me, and they're pretty different. So one was, as I mentioned before, divine providence. So that Swedenborg called divine providence the idea that everything is going to be okay, is essentially what that idea is, that the God is totally loving and totally present and totally can see around corners, and is working it so that not that you're never going to go through pain, but that in the end it's all leading somewhere good. It's all leading somewhere good. Like you mentioned before the interview that you heard a voice that said that your husband was going to die, but many lessons would be learned. That there's a don't like I'm sure nobody wanted that you to have to go through that, but we're going to bring something good out of this.
True.
and we're going to affect the world well. It's not going to be for nothing, and in the end, you guys are going to be
Right.
reunited.
And
So
look at where we are today, and look what
Yeah.
we're doing. Speaking about many lessons being
Yeah.
learned, right?
Exactly. So that idea, and not only that, but just that your life is going how it should go. It's okay. Because I had so much insecurity and so much fear and worry, and like everything felt like it was a mess, and are things going to go wrong? As some fears that made sense, some that didn't, but I couldn't shake them. Divine providence is just like, it's okay. Even if you don't, Swedenborg says that you usually can't see providence in the present. Like you don't know how this is going to turn out okay. But if you look back, you can kind of see it.
You can kind of see the path.
You can kind of, no, I'm not like, maybe not crystal clear, but you can sort of see. And I certainly with myself, I can see, oh yeah, everything that came before, I'm happy to be where I am right now. So that idea was really important to me. The other idea that was important was essentially, don't believe everything you think. So I was sitting here in my depression, getting hammered by these misery-inducing thoughts constantly, and these panic-inducing fears and sadnesses and all this. And Swedenborg taught me about that there's a spiritual world that you're in right now, because you have a body and a spirit. So just like I'm getting physical input right now, like I can see you on the screen there, I can hear my own voice, I can see the physical world's influencing me. The spiritual world is influencing you too, because it's right around the spiritual part of you. And he talked in detail about how it can influence you. And I start to be able to see even my own thoughts that were causing me so much grief as, oh, this is negative spiritual influence that I don't need. I started to think of it like, instead of like, oh, this is true, I'm thinking it so it's true, I started to think about it more like, how you get like spam calls all the time? That I just, just about every time my phone rings, I'm like, I don't need to answer this. because even though if you pick it up, they'll try to make it sound like it's something you need to
That's
listen
a
to.
great way to process that stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a great way to think of it.
So basically what he learned as he called it having his spiritual eyes opened, so that he could still be aware of the physical, but he could see in real time what's going on spiritually at the same time. And he could see the influence of the spiritual world on you, getting to see his experiences and note the details of those, and then see like where that was similar to my own thoughts and feelings. It gave me this way to say like, okay, well, I don't need to listen to that spam call. I can just hang that up. That to me was like, that was a lifeline as
Wow.
well.
And then you had a second lifeline, because you talk about your grandfather and the amazing influence he had on you. And there were last words from him that also inspired how you live your life. So tell us about your grandfather, and then I want to get into more of Swedenborg.
Sure. So I never met him. Never met my grandfather. And my middle name is Lennart, which is a Swedish version of Leonard. He was from Sweden. He died before I was born, but I was named after him. But I had this. I was told by my grandmother, who's since passed away, that this was something he said near the end of his life. So he was getting sicker and sicker, and he couldn't talk anymore. He was in the hospital, but he could just write. He could just write to people, kind of scrawl out some things. I actually got to see the page where he wrote this on, but it was getting close to he was going to die, but nobody knew how long it was going to take. And it was really complicated because they still had kids at home. My mom was I think just about the age of moving out. I think she had just married my dad. But she had younger siblings. So, but it was, my grandmother just didn't know what to even hope for, because does she want him to stick around for a long time, but maybe he's suffering then, and the kids are seeing him suffer, and then there's all the like financial stuff of the hospital, all these things, like, what are we going to do? She was saying to him. And so he couldn't say anything, but he took his pad and he wrote down, I hope the Lord will use me as his best for everyone. And I feel like that's a summation of everything Swedenborg was talking about. If you have to just like take your super nutrient, like what's the approach to life that will make you free from misery and fear and pain, and full of joy. And it's, I hope the Lord will use me as his best for everyone. Because the more I'm obsessed with my own self-image and my greatness, and are things going to go exactly the way I want them, the more miserable I am. The more the more I trust that actually divine providence has got it going on, and the more I want to be useful. And like, hey, how invincible is that perspective to your fears when they say, what if this doesn't work? What if that? I hope the Lord is going to use me as his best for everyone. It reminds you that there is a best for everyone, that there's so to me, those words have stuck with me. That's like a summation of everything I believe. It's like, I hope the Lord will use me as the best
Well,
for
you're
everyone.
hoping your legacy, with all the things, the hills, the valleys of life, and whatever.
Yeah.
That when we get to the end, we hope that it's been for the higher good.
Yeah.
That's basically right.
That's
I mean,
right.
I am so there with you. So with you there, Curtis. So you decided, you were inspired to share Swedenborg's messages with everyone. Was there a specific something that happened that you said, this is it? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to share.
It was gradual. I did not think growing up that I was going to be kind of like you. I did not think I would be talking about spiritual stuff on the internet. I remember when I first made a Facebook page about Swedenborg, because I was making it for the Swedenborg Foundation, who I started to work with. I knew I liked Swedenborg, but still, when I created the page, it was called Heaven and Hell, and it sent out a notification that I created this page. I was like, oh, I hope none of my friends from high school saw that, because it's just this weird, weird heaven and hell stuff. That's not so. It took me a long time to realize that. But at the same time, like I thought growing up that what I was going to do for my job was I was going to do biology, because I love nature, I love ecosystems, and I wanted to like conserve that, and I just wanted to show people it. So, but I just could. The Swedenborg just kept getting more and more important to me. I just couldn't leave it alone, and I started needing it more and more. And eventually, it flipped to where I felt like if everybody, so I saw it being the solution to the problems of life. And it's like, if everybody is thirsty and you found a well of water, you got to tell people it's there. I'm not saying that Swedenborg is going to work for everybody, but it's worked so well for me that this is my contribution to the human race, is I want to give people the opportunity to access it. And I would say as soon as I got a little taste online, I didn't know if it was just me and the people that kind of were into Swedenborg that would like it or benefit. I didn't know how broad the use of it was going to be. But as soon as we got online and started seeing people's reaction to it, I realized, like, no, this is,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
going
onto
to do
something.
this forever. Yep,
It
I'm
was
do
a
this
need.
forever.
It was a need. Just like today, we're doing this for our audience, and now I'm going to ask you a question that's going to get everyone really interested, because Swedenborg learned from angels who guided him after his spiritual awakening. So I'd love to know, please tell everyone, how did he describe angels and the afterlife? And what did he say our souls experience in the spiritual realm? That's
Yes.
really cool.
Yeah. So the cool thing about Swedenborg, some people accuse him of being a little bit dry because he's, remember, this is a guy who was a brilliant scientist and used to very meticulously recording things, and he took that same mind into the afterlife.
Wow.
The cool thing is, it's just, there's no like, I'm trying to sell you on something. There's no like, let's make it emotional. This is just like, here's exactly how it works, which
Wow.
I really like that. So there's so much he says about the nature of angels. According to Swedenborg, and not everybody believes this, and that's totally fine. You know how human beings go through a progression in life. You're a kid, and then you're a tween, and then you're an adolescent, then you're an adult, then you get to be of advanced age. Angel is after that. Like, human
Oh,
beings become angels. So an angel is just a term that he used to describe somebody in the afterlife who has been through this next stage of what you could call like evolution, to where the difference, we're sort of like angels in training. The difference is, when you're an angel, the thing you love the most is to do what is good.
now
Where,
wait a minute, but there
yeah.
are also people who come back into other
So
lifetimes, and also, so do we all become angels and stay there, or how does that work?
you know, I don't know. I do know that there's a constant learning and growing forever. Swedenborg talked about how there's the physical level that you're in, which is kind of like the womb, to the life that goes after that. But even in heaven, he talked about how there are different levels of heaven, and he talked about those levels. Actually, there are 3 levels of heaven because there are 3 levels of the human mind. And as those different levels, what he called opened, so that you know, look toward what's good and true, you become more and more angelic. He does say that everything happens like cycles. He says that it's hard for me to talk about a piece of Swedenborg without talking about all of it. So I'll give you a brief detour into correspondences.
Yeah, sure.
Correspondences is the idea that everything in the physical world is mirroring a truth that happens in the spiritual world. So, like in the physical world, for example, you have these cycles in nature. You have the day cycle and you have the yearly cycle. Those analogs to those same cycles go on inside of human beings, inside of our spirits. So even if you're, let's say you get to this being an angel, it's still like spring, summer, winter, fall. So there's times when you're in more enlightenment and understanding, and then there's times when you even kind of fall out of that and forget something. So, and through those cycles, you continue to
You
learn and
evolve.
grow.
You
Yeah,
evolve. You continue.
yeah, and that you can't, you're never done learning.
So cool.
That there's actually there's no end to the perfection of love and wisdom.
All right, so we're here on Earth, and there are angels amongst us. Then people who, right? I mean, they
So,
come back as angels, or they come back and
well, as he talked about, so angel is a state of mind, right? The angel, if
Okay.
you're in this state of mind, so you can be an angel, you can be in the state of heaven while you're here in the world, because you remember, we have a body and a spirit. But also, angels that are in the spiritual world are around you all the time, or you know that there are angels near you if you're conscious, because according to Swedenborg, our consciousness could not exist without being connected to angels and spirits in the spiritual world. There's an outflow from the divine. Again, Swedenborg loves to get technical about how things work. So you have the divine, from which comes life. Right? There's only one source of life, right? And so that comes out and doesn't go directly into us, because it's like super high voltage. Like you couldn't quite handle it, but it comes down
it's
through
through the soul.
the soul. Yep. And angels are connected to the soul. So when you talk about like getting inspiration or good ideas, that's coming from the divine actually into angels that are around you, and then into your mind. So whenever you get a good thought, whenever you get a feeling of love, that's an angel influencing you in that direction.
That's so cool. So it's not that they're physical people around us, but they are around us
Spiritually.
giving us inspiration and all that. So
Yes.
there are different kinds of angels also. I've heard of guardian angels, archangels, and all of that. So what do you have to say about their roles and the different types of angels that are around us?
Something that I love about, so I said heaven is a state of mind, and particularly heaven is a state of mind where you love usefulness. Swedenborg uses this term usefulness, which usefulness sounds kind of dry. Again, so that's how Swedenborg sounds. But usefulness means doing something good. Like, why are we doing this podcast? Hopefully we're doing it because we think somebody's going to be watching it and it's going to brighten their day, or an idea with it is going to stick with them that is going to make them happy long term. Like, that's usefulness. We have done something that is good for someone.
Right.
So the satisfaction in that is what heaven is based on. So angels are not just sitting around like I'm an angel. This is so great. I don't have to pay bills anymore.
Right.
Like,
I got my wings. By the way, do they have wings?
So he didn't say they have wings as a part of their anatomy, but the spiritual world is full of representations. So there's a lot of things will like appear to like represent other things. So I wouldn't say they can never have wings, but he talked about them being a lot like humans, but just like perfected humans like that. So being useful is what it's all about. So angels have, Swedenborg actually talked about how in his day, there's a lot of people who had all these misconceptions about what heaven is. He talks about people who thought that heaven is just like you worship God all the time. Like, that's all you do. Or heaven is you just never have to work. You just lay around in beautiful surroundings all the time. Or heaven is just like you socialize. And there's people who really thought these things, even more so, I think, in his day than now. And he had this almost comical account of people going into the afterlife with those ideas, and the angels there saying, okay, do you want to try it out? And so they go, instead of saying like that's wrong because you're not going to believe them, they get to go and live those what he called false heavens, to the point where after a few days they're like, let me out of here, like this is miserable. No, they're bored. No happy life can revolve around anything other than usefulness. So angels are in these what he called communities or societies that are focused around a particular task. And just like you have kind of companies here, where we're trying to do. So he talked about angels who guard and protect people. He talked about angels who their function is to welcome people into the afterlife. He talked about angels whose function is to care for little children who have died in the world and grow up in heaven. He said that there are relatively few jobs in the world or functions in the world compared to the ones in heaven. There's so much to do there. So each of us has at least two angels with us at all times. And the reason it's two is that there's two main parts of a human being, your emotions, or what he calls your will, and then your intellect or your mind. Those are what make us human. Yeah, we got arms and stuff too, but what makes you really human is your heart and your mind, basically. So you have one angel who is connected to your heart, and through that connects your heart to heaven, and one angel that connects your mind to heaven. And so those angels are always with you. But then there's also other communities and societies that you can be close to, depending on what you love and how you love it. That will kind of move you around in the spiritual world.
That's so cool. I want to ask you, so say a person, your sister, Annika, would she be described as an angel now?
Yes.
Or a deceased loved one just living on the other side, being attended to by angels? I mean, how does that?
I would call her an angel. I think by now. So an angel is, yes, somebody who is reached to, like, it's just flowing out with love and wisdom. You think about in a movie how people depict angels, like the kind of, or if somebody's really good to you, they help you out when you need it. You say, "Oh, you're an angel to me." Like that's the core of what an angel is. If there's two things in a human being, the heart and the mind, an angel is just someone who there's love. The heart has good, pure love, and the mind has truth in it. So the amount of time she spent in heaven, I think Swedenborg would call her an angel. So sometimes he breaks it down to like, oh, there's angelic spirits, which are people who are sort of getting toward being angels, and there are actual angels. And he says there's angels of the first level, angels of the second level,
Wow.
angels of the third level. But I would think that, I would call her an angel. right now. And I think that there are angels to angels. So there's these different levels of the mind, so different levels of heaven. And an angel on the first level, to them, just like angels seem like kind of far above us here, to an angel in the first level, an angel in the second level seems like that as well. And of course, way above all that is the divine. And all angels would say, I'm nobody special. Like, don't get all worked up about me. This comes from the source. This is all about, there's one good person, and that's God. And I'm just trying to be my part to be sort of a tool in the hands of the maker. Like that's part of where their happiness comes from, is there's no ego attachment to it. There's no like, look at how cool look at all this stuff I can do. I can deliver these messages. I know it. No, it's like, hey, I just want to help you out, and God is good. Yeah.
Now, when you talk about the concept of God, some people refer to it as the source.
Source is a great way to refer to it. So yeah, I mean, all life comes from God, and all ability to think and to feel, even the human form, Swedenborg says, is a radiation out of the divine. The human being is kind of like an index of the divine design. And so Swedenborg was an anatomist, right? So he said, looking back, that all the sciences and everything he got into in his life, that was providence kind of preparing his mind to be able to understand spiritual things. That he didn't ever say, what a waste of time learning about all this science stuff. That the more you understand the physical world, the more you have the sort of metaphors that let you understand the spiritual world. So to him, even the human form and everything he knew about how the body works, you could learn all the secrets of God from looking at that, like that. And if you just think about it, where's there a better model of love and cooperation than the way that different stuff works together in your body?
That's true.
Everything's really different in there. The liver is not like the kneecap at all, but they need each other, and they work. The liver is doing everything it can for the good of the whole and receiving everything else. Kneecap is doing everything it can for the good of the whole. Swedenborg actually said that heaven itself is in like a human form, like a big, wow. Like it's not like it's a continent shaped like a person, but the functions all those communities play are like there's groups of angels that are like the heart, and that they have to do with spreading love in a certain way. There's groups of angels that are like the eyes, and that they have to do with understanding and perceiving. You know how we say like, oh, I see, when we understand something. He says those turns of phrase come from our innate understanding of that this is how it works. So there is this whole, the human form occurs at large scales and small scale. And the only reason it does is because it radiates out from source.
So cool. Now he also talks about the life review, and that we have self-discovery in heaven. And then I want to hear about that. And then after that, I also want to ask you about, because he talks about the nature of heaven and hell. So Can you like talk about those concepts and teach us about those concepts, what he has to say about that?
Yep. So yeah, but I loved when I was reading the early near-death experience books. So like Howard Storm, George Ritchie, many others. One thing, Betty Eady, I remember really liking her. So one thing what I really loved was this life review idea. And what I think that Swedenborg can bring to, this was part of why I was so excited to speak at IANS, is that Swedenborg describes phenomena that near-death experiencers describe, but gives you the sort of the mechanics of how it works. So the life review, Swedenborg calls it the book of life. He says that the reason that happens is because you have a body and a spirit, and your spirit is a lot like your body, but more perfect and much more information dense. So you have a memory, a physical memory, which is pretty good. Like I can sort of remember some things, but then again, you misremember a lot. It's not that great. But there's a spiritual memory in your spirit that absolutely has every detail of everything you've ever done is in there, and it's totally preserved. So when people are having these life review, when they're going back and seeing everything and re-experiencing it, that's being pulled out of the spiritual memory, and that is everything that's done in the afterlife is only done for something useful. This is why people say, I wasn't feeling judged when I was in my life review, but I was judging myself and how I made people feel. The point of that is heaven is when you love everyone and you don't want to harm them, and you don't want to be better than them. So if we can go and learn from our life, oh, I didn't know that made that person feel like that. I wouldn't want someone. If this can help mold us into more of an angel, then it'll happen. So that's the purpose of the life review. Heaven and hell. I can say briefly. So heaven heaven at its core is when you love doing what is good to other people because it's good. It's sort of, heaven is saying, I exist to serve the human race. It's fine to take care of myself and everything, but the ultimate point is I want to do good for the world.
I'm
That's
doing
sort of
service. I'm
yeah,
doing service, right?
doing service. That's the state of heaven. So hell is the opposite of that. Hell is like everything else out there exists to serve me. And we both experience heaven and hell all the time. So hell is a state when you're obsessively like, I want to take from everyone for myself. I want to dominate people. I want to exploit people. Anything that the pleasure of doing things that harm people. Because Swedenborg says that there's a pleasure in heaven and a pleasure in hell. Like we don't go and road rage at people for no reason. It's because there's this insane joy and like, you said that and I'm going to get you back for it. So Swedenborg would call that the pleasures of insanity. So there's a pleasure in heaven, there's a pleasure in hell. So you take the kind of pleasures that you had in this, like whatever you love and enjoy, when you die, you're still you. So you still love and enjoy that. So everybody in the afterlife, nobody has to go anywhere. Nobody, there's not like it's not like God or an angel is there with like a big stick and is
Right.
like,
I mean, there's not right. It's not a place, it's a state of mind.
it's not like you go to heaven, you go to hell. Everyone gets to go and love. You go wherever you want to go and you go to what you love. And if so, afterlife is just a big choice zone. So what happens is people who love, just think about it. Like if you love kindness and you love the welfare of the people around you and you love seeing them succeed and you love making them feel good and those kind of people sort of want to go toward each other. And if you're somebody who's like, I despise everyone in comparison with myself, I enjoy taunting and hurting people, you go around people who are like that as well. That sounds like hell to me. And heaven sounds like
too.
so
But
that's
they're gonna congregate together, people who think that way, right?
That's,
They're
that's
attracted
right.
to the same thought form.
Yeah, exactly. So that in Swedenborg's heaven and hell, like the what you love draws you to people who are similar like you. So that hell is not, he describes places that he calls hell in the afterlife, but it's because that kind of thing that's in your heart, that where you love hurting people and you get together with other people, it just creates these miserable conditions. And that is what he would call hell.
Oh, that's so interesting. Now, do people who gravitate to that place or that thought form, hell,
Yeah.
they can change that, right? They can be in heaven and they can choose to delete the programming and move into the higher consciousness.
Yeah. So we all do that a lot. So you had times in your life. Actually, that's the only way you grow spiritually. So you have times when you kind of get really immersed in your own hell until you get to the point where you're like, I don't want it. I don't like, never mind. I don't want to do this. I've hit rock bottom. I'm out of here. Everything Swedenborg describes that happens in these hell kind of states is to try to free people from the compulsions toward evil or harm that they have. You can stay in there if you want. Like you'll never be forced out of there. But hopefully, if you have any will at all, any desire at all to love what's good and true, then there's angels. And even if you decide, I love all this nastiness, I'm going to stay here, there's still angels who will go down. Some jobs are angels go into hell and make sure people aren't harming each other in ways that can't lead to something good. It says any angel who's in a heavenly state would gladly switch their place with a person in hell if that person wanted them. So even Swedenborg even talks to spirits that he calls evil spirits that are in a hell state, and he records it. In one instance I'm thinking of is in his book Divine Providence, and the evil spirits there are saying like, yeah, heaven's boring, I don't like it. Like you guys think it's so great being good and everything, but this is where the really fun stuff is. And Swedenborg is like, but that's terrible. You're getting pleasure out of doing terrible things. Isn't that bad? Yeah, they're like, yeah, but we can't. So it's like, it's not the like, somebody let us out of here. It's like people are free to go where they want. The source is always trying to. Hell is just the opposite of the source. It's the opposite of love. So God is love and truth, and hell is the is what Swedenborg calls evil and falsity. So God is always trying, and providence is always trying in every moment to get you out of that state if you're willing, and up into heaven, because the intent of the divine is that everyone be as happy as possible, and that's what heaven is.
It sounds to me like heaven and hell and earth and everything is a matter of choice.
That's exactly right.
Right? How you choose to process the thought forms that you choose, the way the decisions, the choices you make, right?
One person who's really into Swedenborg, who I did some interviews with, she said, you are what you love. That's, and Swedenborg opens his book, Divine Love and Wisdom, saying basically, everybody talks about love, but nobody really knows what it is. Little did they know that love is our very life. So you are what you love. And you can choose, and that's one thing that is always, everyone has a freedom to choose what they love. And the more you love heaven-ish things, the more you put yourself in heaven. The more you love hellish things, and the pleasure they give you, the more you put yourself into hell.
Yeah, it's really making me think about that message that I got when they pulled me out of the car: be loving and kind to everyone. And that was an angelic message that came into my head.
Yeah, that's right.
After the accident. And
they didn't force you to.
No,
it didn't say like, here, okay, we said that now, and now we're going to hold your hand and make you do it. It's like, we are at some point where we can make the suggestion, and we hope you do, but it's like, you had to take that and go make it into something.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So now I know, and this is fascinating to me, that you are really happy when you can use his concepts to help someone solve something they used to think was unsolvable. So give us a couple of examples. Give us one or two examples of his teachings and how and you also say that his teachings help people to understand spirituality in new ways, which we're talking about. But how do you apply someone comes to you, she's got a big problem, or a guy's got a big problem. How do you apply those concepts?
Sure. Well, everybody, it's like, if somebody comes to the doctor, the medicine they need depends on what the problem is that they have. So what we've tried to do is, again, Swedenborg has 30 volumes of this stuff. This is quite a lot of material, covers quite a lot of topics. So what we try to do is make videos about everything, so that whatever particular thing you're ailing with, we pull you in. The major ways that people get helped, I think the biggest door into our stuff is grief. People have lost someone, and they want to know where that person is. So what we try to do there is lay out as much as we can of the picture of the afterlife, and that can be medicine for people and helps. And it's that you don't stop grieving. You have a part of you that's just very much in this world and has got to grieve, and that's good. But it can change the nature of the suffering. Can change its suffering. So that's one thing. Sometimes we do talk about hell and evil spirits. So Swedenborg talks about, again, like for me, this was really that not only are there people in scamming me on my phone, but the people in the afterlife who are in this state of hell are trying to scam you. They're trying to attack you. And to learn all the details of how that works, to someone who is really struggling with negative influences in their mind and stuff, that can be really liberating. Some of our episodes about that, to people, that's what they needed. Sometimes it is, as you alluded to, making sense of ideas from people's past that maybe their past religious experience that never clicked for them, like a Christian idea, like how does a Trinity make any sense? Wait, is God really going to punish people? How is hell a place of eternal torment? All of Swedenborg's explanation of those common terms, I find much more satisfying and expansive. So sometimes it's doing that. Sometimes it's connecting, different sorts of faith traditions to each other and seeing sort of the common center in there. Though I would say divine providence and you don't believe everything you think are the ones that solve the hardest challenges for me. But every time that I go into Swedenborg's writings, I was just doing it earlier today after we'd finished filming this morning, just reading through some of his journal of spiritual experiences, and it just puts you in a certain mood. You start thinking about life in a certain way because of the nature of how he describes what he describes and the nature of the reality he describes on the other side. It gets me thinking about life in this way that I never would on my own. And it's so peaceful and so serene. It's kind of like when you're in an airplane and you look down and everything that seems like big, and you just, oh, it's these little teeny houses. That's how it gets me feeling about the machinations of life. Like, okay, everything's going to be all right. I see the order to it. So those are the kind of things I want to try to solve. I had my whole world blown apart when my sister died, and the reason I'm even interested in spiritual stuff is like, how do you put it back together? How does life good? How does it actually turn out okay? The thing that I've found that does that the most is Swedenborg. So that's why I'm trying to.
That's why
get
you're
it to
doing
people.
it.
Yep.
And it really, it's a wonderful thing you're doing, and it's helping so many people. And I guess he's kind of helping people to go to more of a to leave the drama and go to more of a witness attitude about life. That's what it sounds like to me,
Yeah.
right? You can see it in the context of a whole picture instead of like this particular thing that's happening to me right now.
The context is everything. Context is everything. This is why you think about when you were in high school and how like how did everything feel then, and like the drama of, oh, this person like you or not like you, and it seems like that's your whole world. You look back on it now, it's like that's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of
Yeah.
a deal. Understanding why matters. If you understand that there's an afterlife, changes how you live life here. If you understand that you are what you love, that changes how you approach life. If you understand that there's positive and negative spiritual forces, that changes how you treat your own thoughts, but also how you look at other people. You know, like, okay, well, if somebody's doing something that's bad, it's like, okay, well, they're getting pushed into doing that. It just changes the way it's not supposed to take you out of life. It's not. Swedenborg it's funny because a lot of people will ask me like, well, how do you trigger spiritual experiences? Doesn't Swedenborg tell you? He never talks about that. He doesn't. To him, he goes to all these far-flung amazing places, but the important stuff is just the mundane stuff you can do every day through living in the world. The most spiritual thing you can do, according to Swedenborg, is to go and do your job, whatever your use is to the world. Go do that humbly, justly, faithfully. That's spiritual practice. So it's this cool mixing of the really out there and the really almost mundane, because you're not supposed to leave regular life behind. You're supposed to just add this spiritual understanding to it.
Right, which is such a comfort. And he also said that every moment holds a series of consequences that extend to eternity. So do you want to explain that, Curtis?
Yeah, well, it's you can be sitting around and like, what's the point of my life? Right? I'm not doing anything. This is
a lot of people do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, of course. I would say that's hell telling you that in your mind. It's not really true, but something you can use to solve that is Swedenborg talks about every moment has a consequence that extends to eternity. You can see this in, like, think about the development of a human being. Like, you start as like you're a few little cells. How those cells divide and what they're doing, it's a step toward this huge human. You would never know it in the moment, but it's a step toward this huge human being with trillions and trillions of cells. You're going to have every little development moves you toward that. So it is with everything in your life. Everything in your life is perfectly being oriented by divine providence to go somewhere good. Swedenborg talks about it like if you're going to shoot a bow, because I think they still sort of had bows. Gunpowder obviously was there, but it talks about if you're going to shoot a bow, and if you're going to shoot it, 100 yards, if your aim is just off by a little here, like a tenth of an inch, an eighth of an inch, by the time it gets to that target, it's going to be way off. It's going to be 20 feet off. God has got to be so deep in the details of what's going on with you that if he wasn't like making sure everything was going so right, you'd go way off track. So I find that comforting, because it's saying everything's under control. This matters. Everything's going to be all right. I'm here with you. I'm taking care of things. So I feel like it's a message of like care and comfort, but also like every moment matters. Every moment matters, and eternal good can come out of every moment.
Right. And it redounds to everyone around you and everything around you. And I have to ask you, Curtis, of all people, what is your message? Why should people worry about either studying Swedenborg or getting to healing of some kind? What is the importance of healing on this planet while we're here, as opposed to waiting?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, like you can't. It's like, what's the point of school? I'm just going to go have a job. Like, you got to learn. You got to learn to, like, what's the point of being in the womb and developing there? Each stage matters, or it wouldn't be there. It's like, what's the point of having skin? All I care about is the internal, or like we're here for a reason. This particular place, being in the physical world with a spirit and a body, is the right condition for you to start in, because there's a couple things you have there that you don't have when you're in the spirit. You have a sort of an inner and outer self. So I can be in a room and I'm thinking these like insane critical thoughts about everyone, but I don't say them because I don't want everyone to know I'm thinking that. In this life, I can stop and say like, wait, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. I can examine myself and I can change and do that. That's something you can do here. Also, you can't have the spiritual world without the physical world. You can think of angels like, oh, angels are so fancy up there, but Swedenborg says we couldn't live without angels. Angels can't live without us. It's really is like the skin versus the muscles and the bone. Like you need the external and the internal at the same time. So the life you're living, the things you care about, that's actually providing a foundation for heaven right now. As far as being healed and whole, Swedenborg has a quote: "Worry about the future greatly slows the inflow of spiritual life." So anything that's not like peaceful, joyful, happy, which is what the divine was trying to do for us, that makes it harder for us to do what we need to do. So I know it's really hard to not have that, but the more we strive to getting to a place where we're joyful and we love usefulness, it's part of the divine design. It's how you're supposed to be to do the things you need to do now.
So that's why there would be so many healing modalities on the planet to help people to get more towards that space, right?
Yeah. So what if heaven is being useful? When are you useful if you're crippled by misery and pain? Like, and so healing is of the utmost importance. What about Jesus Christ? What was he doing all the time? Healing. And what about in the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations? What's a better? Why wouldn't you? I think you can sometimes feel about yourself like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, no, it matters. Like we want you healed because you can do something for the human race that nobody else can do. It's like, what does it matter if a part of your body isn't healed? It needs to be healed so it can do what it's supposed to do for the body.
Right.
So I would say that, yeah, everybody's here for a purpose, and everyone has like an eternal purpose. Like you are going to be able to do something for the human race that nobody else can do forever. So let's get you ship shape so you can go and do that.
Oh, that's fabulous. And do you have an offer for our audience today?
Yep. We'll give you, if you reach out to us, we'll give you free download of Swedenborg's book, Heaven and Hell, which is, I think, gives you the best, like, quick overview of everything. But you'll be able to download PDF of that for free if you reach out to us.
That's great. And we'll provide links and all of that in the show notes and all that. And what is the Curtis Charles tip for finding joy in life?
Okay. I hope the Lord will use me as his best for everyone. If you can, whatever, you don't have to say the Lord, whatever you want to use for your terminology, that spirit of, I want to do this good because it's good. That's invincible joy. You can have other kinds of joy. Like you can have I won, I got the most views on this video, I did this thing, that you can have that, but it comes and goes. And it's overall, the greatest joy is like, it's not that you don't have the other kinds of joy, but they're supporting joy. The main joy is, I want to do good. And you see it come through every once in a while. Like even if I go out and do these videos and I'll get sort of caught up in, is anyone watching this videos? But sometimes I'll see these comments where people are talking about how the videos impacted them. And I can imagine like, oh, what if that was me, what it would feel like. And then you really start to care about it. Then you're like, oh yeah, this is great. So whatever you're doing in your life, try to think about the good that it does. And follow that, take breaks, do other things to recreate, but have that. The more you can focus on that and love that, the more happiness comes with it.
I could not agree more, Curtis. Curtis, really, truly, I want to thank you for all that you do to transmit Swedenborg's important messages about the ongoing journey of the soul, angels, self-awareness, and the transformative power of the afterlife, which is helping people to apply spirituality in their lives and find peace. What a true blessing. And I also want to thank you from my heart for this incredibly enlightening interview that has brought so many profound new insights to all of us. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast messages on ireneweinberg.com, and make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And while you're here, for those of you who are listening, you can find my 2 books linked in the show notes. And for those who are watching on YouTube, be sure to check out my 2 books listed above. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you from my heart, Curtis. Many, many blessings. And
thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.